Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and Kevin Noon behind the scenes. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we're 3 days? This is not a.
I don't know how you count
Buckeye
days.
Morning, so we're like 3 days away from one of the biggest games of the year in college football, and. I think I said this last week, but this is another week where you get to Wednesday night and it's like, the game's almost here suddenly. I don't know how that happened. Well, I guess it's been a busy week full of content for us, and which is good for us and good for the viewers.
Got 1 day to get everything done that we were supposed to get done for the week, so that is always fun.
Yes, and then we will be in South Bend on Friday, and good news, that will mean more content.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I heard a Notre Dame writer on a national radio show saying this could be the biggest game, the biggest thing in South Bend since the Bush push, as long as the game turns out okay. That was, 2005?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, I mean, if we have an ending like that, that would be okay.
I'm thinking, that might be a little bit retroactively kind of the Georgia was there in 2017, and that was a pretty good Georgia team. I think some of the other games might have felt bigger in the moment and then not ended up quite as big. But yeah, I mean, this is two top 10 teams. It's two of the. I mean, I don't know. I just saw one of those stupid, here's exactly how many fans each team has kind of things. And I think Ohio State and Notre Dame were in the top three. Ohio State's number one by a million miles, but I think Notre Dame was kind of top three. Two historic brands, huge win totals. This is one of those weeks where you hear football players, many of them say, this is the reason you come to fill-in-the-blank school, is to play in games like this.
Two of the best defenses in the nation, Tom. Mm-hmm. I'm writing about that right now, and I say two of the best defenses in the nation. When you look at the best offense that either of these two teams have played, statistically, is North Carolina State. Mm-hmm. So does that make you go,
Well, I think this is a kind of prove-it week, I think, where you go through a bunch of the national defensive statistics and yards per play allowed and that kind of stuff, and these teams are 1-2, 3, 2-4, 3-4, top 5 in a lot of stuff, and top 10 and even more stuff. But you look at the competition they've played, and it's they're doing what they should be doing, and Ohio State. You go back over the years, and there are plenty of Ohio State defenses that have gotten just lit up by not very good defenses, not very good offenses. I go back to 2018, and they gave up 31 to Oregon State, and that was not a good Oregon State team. And it was kind of so now you look at that, they've given up zero second half points through 3 weeks, and it's but it was only Indiana and Youngstown State and Western Kentucky. But it's but that's still zero. You literally cannot do better than 0 second half points.
Well, and the reason Western Kentucky is ranked below NC State is because they played Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So you got to fit these two. All of these offenses have played a good defense that has hindered their numbers. So it is Wednesday evening as we record this, as we stream live. We talked with 8 to 10 Buckeyes. I know that I spoke with Travion Henderson, and I only spoke with 2 people at my table, and I should remember the second one. But it's not important who we spoke to, Tom. What is important is neither one of us were at Kyle McCord's table, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. Kevin was there. Speaking of Kevin, if you've got questions, go ahead and throw them in. Super chats, throw them in. We will get to them. I have all of my notes. Oh, Josh Proctor was at the middle table. That was good. Travion Henderson and Tyleek Williams is who I got.
Okay, well, I got Donovan Jackson and Sonny Styles, and wide receiver something or other Harrison. I don't remember what his name was.
Marvison, as they say in the press box. Marvison Harrison, Junior son.
I had Proctor, McCord, and Stover.
Yeah, Proctor, McCord, and Stover. So is that 8, 9 guys? It was a good haul today. Sometimes it's 5 or 6. Last week over at my table 3, I didn't get anybody. So I got two players today. You'll always take that. Cade Stover, we talk to him constantly all the time. Said, in terms of, is this a big game? He's like, you can't make it any bigger than any other game. It's the same game they've been playing since they were 6 years old. So you don't want to make too much of it. And he also said that if we played in a parking lot, it'd still be a good game.
And it's funny because, Donovan, you sort of get the, you pick up these trends of what these guys are saying to each other behind the scenes, because Donovan Jackson talked about the fact that he was talking to some of the other younger offensive linemen about the fact that this is the same game you've been playing since you were 7 years old. So apparently the offensive line got a little bit of a late start, but it's the same game you've been playing since since you were 7 years old. It's just the guys across the line are a little faster and you're a little bit stronger. But it's it's the same thing. And I think that's just sort of a way to sort of mentally approach the week, and it's measuring the rims in the gym and Hoosiers, hey, it's
Hickory.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same game. There aren't rouges all of a sudden. It's the same game, and you got to just go in and not try and make the moment bigger than it is.
So the first guy out was Josh Proctor, which is interesting because last year's game he was also the first guy out of the game after making a mistake, and so I think it was Tim May asked him So man, you excited about the mulligan that you're going to get, and
it's a pretty good Tim.
Yeah, thank you. and he's like, he said he's looking forward to this as a stepping stone. And so the question is stepping stone to what? He's like, you guys all saw last year. You saw what happened in that game last year. So this is something that he's looking forward to. He's been playing as well as anybody on defense for the Buckeyes this year. He's more confident than he was last year because he knows what he's doing. Says he's more level-headed. And he knows his job. Everybody knows their job, and so you don't have to do more than you're supposed to. You just do your job, and everything else falls into place. Mm-hmm. And so that's what he's doing right now. And if he has a good game on Saturday, I really, really like Ohio State's chances in this one.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where, if you tell me Kyle McCord throws 6 touchdown passes, yeah, of course they're going to win. If you tell me that Josh Proctor grades out as a champion, I don't know that I guarantee that. That guarantees that they win, but that's one of those things that would be like, okay, in my mind, the point spread is shifting by about a field goal or maybe more than that, just based solely on that piece of information. Because he's someone who, if he's playing a good game, that means he's probably active in the run game, because you've got to be active in the run game. Audric Estime, you've got to have, I think Sonny Styles was talking about, you've got to gang tackle, you've got to get him to the ground. Josh Proctor is probably a part of that because he comes downhill very hard off from that safety spot. But also, if you're grading out as a champion, that means you don't have a bunch of stuff going over your head.
That's the key.
And, you got to crash at the right times, but then you also got to stay back at the right times and not get sucked in on that play action. If he has a good game, that is a very, you give me 3 keys to the game, Josh Proctor grades out as a champion is one of those keys.
Yeah, if that happens, like I said, because you don't want to give up just a big, cheap chunk of yards, and they did that last year. And if they don't do that in this one, and they make Notre Dame fight for it and just scrap for every yard, every first down, then that's something that builds confidence in the defense. Unless, of course, they continue to pick up these third downs. Yeah. But as long as you're not giving up the big yards, and really, I think Josh Proctor is a lot of that. And he's just one guy. But it's just and I keep saying the play action that concerns me in terms of what we still don't quite know about this defense. And that's where I go, is the play action, because they haven't faced a running attack that the safeties need to help out with as much as they may in this one.
Well, and can Josh Proctor be Jordan Fuller?
Yeah.
Can Josh Proctor even be 85% of Jordan Fuller? Because if he can, that's something that Ohio State has been missing at times on the back end of that defense. It's just that eraser in the back end where stuff just doesn't get past you. Because we just rewatched the North Carolina State game, which that episode went up on the Buckeye Weekly Podcast feed on Wednesday night, just a few hours ago if you're watching live. And if you're listening, you can go back one episode on the feed. We are having one of those weeks where it's like, there are more episodes than there are days. So
choose your own adventure.
Yeah, exactly.
If you would like to read this back.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think we noticed in that North Carolina State game, we watched that because that's obviously by far the best team that Notre Dame's played so far, is when Notre Dame was moving the ball, it was 80-yard run by Estime. It was 54-yard dump off in the flat to Tyree. It was a 45-yard, just a little crosser, and then 30 yards of yak that turned it into a 45-yard gain. Because Sam Hartman was something like 15 of 24 or something like that, 13 to 24. It was like 62% completion, but it was like 11.9 yards per catch, because when he hit one, it turned into a big play because they weren't getting guys down on the ground. If you can get those Notre Dame receivers on the ground and make them have to drive and be methodical, that puts a lot of pressure on them to continually execute if they can't get things in chunks.
Talking with Tyleik Williams, obviously the Notre Dame offensive line was a point of emphasis for this defense, and he mentioned, Joe Alt's good, and he's like, well, they're all good. He's just like the lead, the ringleader of them, and we'll get to that in a bit. Kevin, Super Chat,
Ryan Dawes, what side of the ball for Notre Dame will be a bigger challenge for OSU and vice versa?
Which side of the ball will be a bigger challenge for Ohio State, Notre Dame, and vice versa? Which side of the ball? The biggest challenge, I'm going to say, for Notre Dame will be the Ohio State offense, because they can threaten you in so many different ways. The talent, I just feel like the talent level is a little bit higher for Ohio State's skill positions than some of the guys that they'll be facing against Notre Dame. And Notre Dame has some very talented defensive players, but if you're asking me to put somebody up against, compare anybody to like a Mecca, Ibuka, and Marvin Harrison, I'm going to choose those guys over almost anybody they're facing in college football. So I think that offense, the Ohio State offense, poses the biggest challenge. And we talk about the play action with Notre Dame, but don't forget about the play action with Ohio State, because they'll be able to dial it up. They want to get started fast, get the running game going, opens up the passing game, but this is also a quarterback that is confident, and a coach now who is confident in calling a bunch of passes early to maybe open up the run. And so I'm thinking the entire offense will be available to Kyle McCord, which is maybe not what Notre Dame would like to hear.
Yeah, and on the other side, I think the Notre Dame defense might be a bigger challenge to Ohio State than the Notre Dame offense. I think the Notre Dame offense is good, solid. I think you've got a veteran quarterback in Sam Hartman that's not going to make the big mistake. And so you are going to have to earn getting them off the field, just like they're going to have to earn picking up those first downs. But I think the stronger of the two units is the Notre Dame defense. I mean, 10 of the 11 guys are seniors or grad students. That is a very, very veteran, experienced defense. You got the same coordinator as you did last year, Al Golden, you're the head coach. Marcus Freeman, obviously a defensive guy himself. Like, you've got another year in the scheme, another year with all the same terminology, another year with a lot of the same players. I think of all the units on the field, I think the Ohio State offense might be the most talented. And if you tell me only one team is going to score 40 points, I don't think it's likely either team scores 40 points. But if you tell me one team's going to score 40 points, I'm going to say Ohio State real fast. I don't think it's super likely that they do, but I think the Ohio State defense and the Notre Dame defense are both very good. And the Ohio State offense has maybe the highest ceiling of all of them. But a lot of that's going to hinge on how the offensive line plays. And how is that going to go? I don't know.
I was impressed by the Notre Dame secondary, watching them on Wednesday. Which secondary do you think has the advantage in a tail of the tape? Not against who they're facing, but which secondary? Because Ohio State secondary is playing really, really well right now. But is this a push? I mean,
it's probably close to a push. I mean, Marvin Harrison talked about Benjamin Morrison, he was a freshman All-American last year, second-year guy this year. I think he's very good. And Harrison talked about the fact he plays at the boundary a lot, so Harrison is expecting to face him a lot. I think if your best corner is a sophomore and Ohio State's best corner is a junior, I'm probably going to side with the junior. And Ohio State, the corner on the other side of the field, Davis Nagbe-Nosen, he's pretty darn solid. Jordan Hancock in the nickel spot, or Sonny Styles in that nickel spot, pretty darn solid. And, Lathan Ransom, Josh Proctor, you've got a veteran unit out there for the most part. And I think I'd go slight edge Ohio State. But those are, the fact that we're even having this conversation tells you this is a very, very good Notre Dame secondary.
Yeah, because Ohio State secondary has been fantastic. I'm not quite to the point where I'm a complete believer, because I just want to see this one more thing, the defending the play action. But everything we've seen from the safeties, Proctor, Ransom, Sonny, you want to throw Jordan Hancock in as the nickel, like the weak spot, I don't even want to call it the weak spot. Jordan Hancock has been giving up the most catches because he's learning, he's playing a different position. He's still coming into his own, but the safeties have been really, really good. Like, if I'm watching from the Notre Dame side, and I've only seen, and I just pick one Ohio State game to watch, and I watch these safeties, I'm thinking these guys are really, really good. Now, we've seen them play last year where they made some mistakes, so it's like that's hard to forget. But if you're just watching, you just pick a random game, say Western Kentucky, you're like, where is the weakness on this Ohio State secondary? You're probably going to say, well, they need to target Jordan Hancock. I'm not sure that's actually going to be very productive.
Well, and Jordan Hancock's going to be on the field maybe half the time. I mean, my sense is that when Notre Dame's in a 12 personnel kind of setup, you're going to see Sonny Styles out there, because Styles talked about the fact that when the tight end is easier to run with speed-wise for him, than
right?
the little short shifty. Yeah, I mean, this is not exactly. It's good to hear him say that out loud, and it's like, okay, because these are the things that I've been thinking for a long time, and the things that I think you go back into August, and I was kind of saying like, well, I kind of want to see him try and run with the speedy slot guy, because if it's Tyree out there, it's a 5'9" guy. That's a Jordan Hancock matchup. If it's one of the tight ends, then that's a Sonny Styles matchup. And he said, if you can, some of those slots are super fast, but I can do better when I can get my hands on them. So, you're going to see him covering a little short, speedy slot guy at some point, I'm going to guess. He may also be back at that bandit spot at some point as well. And, he said that's where when he came in, that's where he started. So that's a position he's gotten some experience there. This is not just like, and now you're in a different spot altogether. You've never played before. He's got some experience there. So if you end up having Hancock out there and you move Styles to the bandit spot in place of Latham Ransom, that's, that sounds like something that he's not super concerned about.
Neither you or I got to talk to Kyle McCord, but we talked to guys who talked about Kyle McCord. One of the things that Travion Henderson said that was about the last week of camp, you just saw a different Kyle McCord in terms of leadership, mentality, not mentality, but just like the team sort of became his at that point. And it was over those final 2 weeks of fall practice where we had heard that he just taken off, and that's where he had separated from Devin Brown on the field. But just the command over the offense, leadership amongst his teammates. It was like that last week that Travion Henderson said, that's where he noticed it, because somebody asked him, did you notice it in the week leading up to Western Kentucky, because that's when he was named a starter. He's like, honestly, it was like the last week of fall practice when it really became evident that this guy is the next guy, and now he is the guy, the present guy. And anytime we ask somebody about him, they always talk about how calm he is, how he doesn't get rattled. Losing a fumble in a game didn't rattle him. Throwing a bad pass on third down that should have been a first down doesn't rattle him, because he comes back and completes it for fourth down. So the demeanor that he has rubs off on his teammates, and it gives them confidence as well.
Well, and Donovan Jackson talked about the fact that Kyle McCord has always been a voice in that locker room. He just has a bigger platform now. But, he said he is always all the same stuff you heard about C.J. Stroud, you heard about Justin Fields. First one in, last one to leave. Donovan Jackson said he will, be like walking out, and then Kyle McCord's like in the hot tub watching film, and he's like, dude, you gotta go home. You can't. And he said he just pretends not to hear me. Just stays there working.
I walked over as he said that, and I wasn't sure if he was talking about Kyle McCord or John Cooper.
Yeah. Need Kyle towels for the game on Saturday. Marvin Harrison has a little bit of a different perspective on Kyle McCord, because, of course, he has been Marvin Harrison's quarterback many times before the last few weeks. Said he's the same every game. Like, you don't, and you sort of get the sense when he's on the sideline, he's always seems like he's quiet and focused. Like, he's not necessarily the guy who's running around being rah-rah. He's just kind of locked in, and he's always just very kind of serious, a little bit stoic at times. But he said calm and collected, but prepares harder than anyone else. And said his high school sophomore year, Kyle McCord's first start, sophomore year, played against St. Francis from Maryland, which is a top 5 team in the nation. He's a first-time starter, still just kind of a calm, collected guy. That's just how he's been for several years. I did see, was it your tweet, I think, that I saw something today that Sam Hartman's first college start came before Kyle McCord got his driver's license.
Oh, really?
It was like, wow. That put some things in perspective. Marvin Harrison said he loves playing on the road. He said he likes the villain mentality on the road, which that's you think about guys, when you're thinking about guys coming in and doing the villain mentality thing in your team stadium, I'm sure Ohio State fans don't love it when J.J. McCarthy does that, like comes in last year and does the villain mentality thing. I have a feeling Ohio State fans will love it if Marvin Harrison is playing the villain on Saturday night.
They'd love it even more if it's their quarterback doing it, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Ohio State released the video of, was it pre-game, post-game, Kyle McCord getting after it in the locker room, like a week or so ago. A very emotional pre-game speech, getting his guys fired up so that everybody on the outside could see what those guys on the inside see. And yeah, those two, and then little Emeka Egbuka just in the background running around, say, hey, throw it to me once or twice, guys. And I can't wait to see, because Notre Dame has some really good corners. Like a guy like Christian Gray that Ohio State was hard after, is like in the two deep, and he got to play a little bit less against North Carolina State, but they've got some talent in that secondary. It's going to be a fantastic matchup. But if Ohio State's offensive line holds up, then that makes me like Ohio State's skill chances even more.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what happens in those trenches. One thing that Marvin Harrison got asked about was, this got just kind of like casually mentioned on the broadcast last week apparently, but he sprained his ankle last year. It was week 2 against Arkansas State. He said he got rolled up during a long pass. He said he just had to manage it. He just played with it all year, and he said he felt it every game. He couldn't really plant on one leg. Feels good in his ankle to accelerate and decelerate now, but last year it was really cutting and decelerating were the issues. And so that was Marvin Harrison playing on one leg last year. Two legs, arguably, like 100% better.
Yeah, 2 Heismans. That's what I'm saying. The health of the guys compared to last year, I mean, you talk about TreVeyon Henderson, more confident and than he's ever been. Somebody asked him, like, are you more like confident, and do you feel better about things? And he's like, yeah, I think I do. And,
like it hasn't occurred to him before.
You're right. It is true, and that's a guy that was injured from the second or third game of the season last year, and has been good to go now. Tyleik Williams, who I also talked with, obviously injured on the first day of fall camp, his knee, and it's still. And it's not an issue, it's there. He's playing through it and is happy to play through it, loves playing as much as he does, getting 50 snaps, I think this last game, more than he's ever had. I wonder how many 2 games in a row he's had 50 snaps in his career, because it's probably not many. But he also credited it to not just being in shape for it, but the film study, because he knows more what's going on. And I asked him, when did that kick in that you need that film study? And he's like, it's like the first game of the season when he realized how much work he put in and the results that came from it. And so now he wants more film, and is always watching it, and is a much different player in terms of just that aspect. Everybody's going to credit the ability to play more snaps, and he's like, he was never winded against Western Kentucky. He said he could, he obviously they take them out, but the tempo never got to him. He was fine. He was good to go, and I think that all of those are music to Buckeye fans' ears.
Well, it's just sort of a sign of growth. You have different guys. You have the guys who come in like Marvin Harrison with the work ethic and mentality on day one, and those guys really stand out because that is not the norm. When you get a guy like that, everyone kind of goes, whoa, and starts talking about him immediately, and those guys turn into Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson or Marvin Harrison or someone like that. Some guys come in and it takes a while. Josh Proctor is maybe a little bit of a takes a while guy in some ways. Tyleik Williams is maybe a little bit of a takes a while guy in some ways, where you've been the best football player on the field pretty much every game your whole life, and now you're in college, and now that's not true anymore, and it takes a little while, and then it's like, okay, well, certainly next year that will be my time to shine, and then it's like, well, no, it's not necessarily your time to shine next year. Sometimes it takes 3 years or even more. And Donovan Jackson was asked about Tyleik Williams and his growth, and he looked deadpan straight at the person who asked it. Did he tell you to ask me that? Which is, he said, yeah, he has had tremendous growth. He obviously goes up against Tyleik a lot during practice. I just thought that was, a very maybe honest moments. One of those kind of peek behind the curtain kind of moments.
We'll get to the super chat. I'll give you another peek behind the curtain. Somebody asked Tyreek Williams about his touchdown celebration where he rubbed his belly and he's like, I got that from, and he pointed over at C.J. Hicks, and C.J. Hicks is like, yeah. so it's teamwork makes the dream work.
All right, super chat.
Super chat from Jordan Kapler, so you can guess where this one's going.
All right.
Kevin is the worst. Go on.
Thank you, Jordan.
Kevin keeps lying and saying he has no control over player interview availability when we demanded Steel Chambers. Grounds for firing?
Okay, so Kevin claiming falsely that he has no control over player availability. We certainly would like to have Steel Chambers every week, just as Jordan would. I mean, you would as well,
Yeah,
right?
I wish Kevin wasn't so against it every week.
Well, he does hate fun.
He does hate fun, and he hates theoretical animal questions and
Everything that is good in life.
yeah. But that's Kevin. that's like a sitcom. That's Kevin.
Laugh track.
Boo track.
We talked about the importance of the offensive line in this game, and Donovan Jackson talked a lot about that. Matt Jones is the senior guy in the room, but I think Donovan Jackson might be the more vocal guy in the room. Matt Jones has just always been a quiet dude. He is a big, strong dude. He goes out, he does his job. That's just not that's not how he goes about his day. Donovan Jackson talked about the fact that, this is one of these games where strain is, 80% of the games, 80% of the plays, look the same, and the other 20% define the game. You don't get a lot of plays. You have to make the most of them. Strain is like that last 20% of plays doing that and finishing. And, he didn't necessarily, like Justin Fry last week talked about violence, and he said it wasn't necessarily that they were violent. He felt that they executed at a higher clip than the previous 2 weeks. They improved a lot, still a lot more to improve against a very talented Notre Dame front. Every day they tell each other what they're working on and what they need to get better at, what they're working, they're working on their craft and what they're working on to improve every day. This is a work in progress offensive line, and you've seen progress already. This is a week when they need to take it. Last week was a step. They need to take another step this week in order to win in South Bend.
Yeah, and we'll get to the super chat. The advancement of the sustaining blocks from game 2 to game 3, that needs to continue that from game 3 to game 4. Kevin.
Super chat, glass swing butterfly. We were about to riot if Steele wasn't interviewed, but we mellowed out at the last second.
It's always good to mellow out at the last second. Don't want to let emotions get the better of you. It is just football interviews. It's not. If it was football, yes, get emotional, get upset. If it was traffic, yes, of course, get emotional, get upset. This is just football interviews on a Wednesday. Perhaps we will get to talk to Steel Chambers after the game. And if it's an emotional game, somebody will ask him something dumb and off the wall, and he'll be there for 7 minutes. And then you'll have that. So look forward to that. And we won't have anybody next week, but I'm guessing we'll have Steel Chambers the week after that, because it'll have been a while since we talked to him.
I'm just kind of scrolling through my notes. The last thing I had was Marvin Harrison talking about how moving him around helps the whole offense, makes it harder to plan for them. He's not just always outside on the boundary side. You put him in the slot, that creates a different matchup. Moving Emeka Egbuka from inside to outside, that creates a different matchup. That, and you've seen that. We've talked about that a bunch this year, but that's one of those things that you look at it and you go, I wonder if they're doing this to create matchups. The answer is, yes, they are doing this to create matchups, which they view as favorable. And guess what? It has worked a bunch already this year.
Talking to Cade Stover about blocking, he said, blocking is like a fist fight, Tom. And basically, I think the next line was like, sometimes you're going to get walloped, And then he also said, it's like a Rocky movie. It's just everybody's just beating the crap out of each other. And then I think it was our buddy Tim May. He said, you got a soundtrack in the back of your mind there? And he's like, yeah, it's the montage from Rocky IV when he's in Russia. So that's the stuff that we get here.
You know what they say, Tony? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Except in this case, we're going to get a super chat.
Super chat, Murphy Serafino. If you had to pick one player from each side of the ball that needs to have their best game, who would it be minus McCord?
Okay, so pick one player from each side of the ball that has their best game minus Kyle McCord. I mean, we talked about Josh Proctor earlier. I think Josh Proctor is Josh Proctor's a good answer and might be my answer, but boy, if JT Tuimoloau could top his performance against Penn State last year, that feels like that's kind of cheating, but also would be my answer.
If you can find somebody to beat Chase Young, and that could be JT Tuimoloau, that wrecks a lot of things. I was thinking Steel Chambers and tackling Audric Estime when he's got an opportunity to, and limiting him to 1 or 2 yards, as opposed to maybe missing a tackle. Now that becomes 8 yards. If they can, because I expect Tommy Eichenberg to be pretty good, and if they can get the best game possible out of Steel Chambers, now that's just a linebacker. I think you'd rather have somebody up front, to just create a bunch of havoc. So look what Mike Hall did last year. So I might go, if you're going to take JT, I might go Mike Hall, because he's a guy that can rush the passer, he can defend the run, and he gets back there so quickly. The other side, I may have to go with Audric Estime, the Notre Dame running back. If he controls this game, then he's going to keep the third down shorter. He's going to keep Ohio State off the field. So he might be my pick there, although if you go with Joe Alt to limit whoever is rushing against him. But I'll go Estime there, because if he goes for 150.
Yeah, well, if he goes for 150, then that probably, your paths to victory for Ohio State are much more limited if he's going for 150, because that sets up so much stuff in the passing game as well. I think the question was really a guy on the Ohio State offense to have his best game.
Okay.
To me, that might be Josh Simmons. If we're not saying Kyle McCord, I think Josh Simmons would be someone where if he has his best game and there's no penalties and there's no pass rush on the blind side, and you're getting some good push and short yardage over there, I think that, if Travion Henderson has his best game, that probably sort of by proxy means the offensive line is having a pretty good game. So you're kind of cheating there. But just in terms of like this one guy, and all I can tell you is this one guy by himself without any external factors plays his best game, I think I might go with Josh Simmons, just because I think that offensive line is going to be so important on Saturday.
I might go Carson Hinsman, with the interior and getting the calls right, and all of the communication is perfect, which is going to be very difficult to do. I wonder, a bunch of silence going on, hand signals and things like that, and that. So if they can get the very best out of Carson Hinsman in a hostile environment, an environment where you should not be playing your very best, and your fourth career start. So I might go, I'll say Carson Hinsman. I will see your Josh Simmons and raise you a Carson Hinsman.
Now, I did not poke my head out the door when we first got here, but I didn't hear piped-in crowd noise from the field. And normally I think you can hear that. We were waiting out in the lobby of the Woody, and Kevin shaking his head no as well. So, I would have expected this to be a crowd noise thing, but maybe that's a Thursday practice kind of thing. But I was sort of expecting to come in hearing crowd noise and didn't. I was a little surprised by that.
Kevin, we got any questions in there?
We got a lot of them, so we'll have to kind of go.
All right, rapid fire.
Lightning round.
Guys, one answer per person.
Yakov 22, what % of the stadium will be Ohio State fans?
What % of the stadium will be Ohio State fans? I say 30.
10.
All right.
It's going to be it is a absolutely difficult ticket to get.
It is a very tough
and
ticket to get,
a tough tickle.
RK, question, vibe of the players.
Vibe of the players, excited, ready, and looking forward to this one. Like Kate Stover is never really different. Like, these guys are all pretty even keel, especially the guys we talked to today. And Kyle McCord is always even keel. So I'm just excited to play and would play this game anywhere. It doesn't really matter, according to what Kate Stover had to say.
Odysseus, since Al Washington is the run D coordinator, do you suggest a heavy dose of Chip, Trey, and Mayan? Since
Al Washington, former Ohio State linebackers coach, is the run defense coordinator for Notre Dame, do you suggest a heavy dose of Chip Trayanum and Mayan Williams? I think a lot of that depends on how the offensive line plays. If they're able to move the ball with a heavy dose of run, I think that's probably big. If you don't tell me anything other than yards per carry, and Ohio State has more yards per carry than Notre Dame, I feel very, very, very good about Ohio State's chances. I think Ohio State's going to struggle to run the ball at times because I think this offensive line is still a work in progress, and the Notre Dame defense is smart and veteran and probably going to be bringing a bunch of stunts and twists. And confusing the first time or the fourth time starter at center, Carson Hinsman. If Ohio State's able to run the ball, I think that's an enormously good sign for the Buckeyes.
Kevin?
Yes. Anthony Anderson was just checking out an Indy Live podcast. These people are delusional. They think they'll completely blow us out.
Well, I guess my question would be who, the people in the comments or the people on the podcast? Because
is Ohio State, is this going to Purdue or an Iowa? I don't see Notre Dame as a Purdue or an Iowa, so I wouldn't worry about just a complete blowout. I would be very surprised. Now, Tom, you are very matter of fact when it comes to when you know blowouts are going to happen. So, do you see a blowout happening in this one?
I don't think so. Unless you have a team that turns the ball over a bunch and you get a bunch of short fields, if this game kind of plays out the way I'm expecting it to, I think it's going to be relatively close, relatively low scoring. I'm expecting the winning team to maybe be in the high 20s for this one, which, unless you're shutting someone out, you're really not, unless it's 28-7, you're not really blowing someone out. And I think the Ohio State skill talent is too good for them to just get run off the field. And the defense is too good this year to get run off the field.
Kevin?
Yeah, next one. Wingman Ted. Does anyone want to really see Jaden Ballard as the full-time returner?
Does anybody want to see Jaden Ballard as the full-time returner? I think they just you want to see the guy who catches the ball. That's especially in this game. What good is a punt return touchdown if you also muff a punt and you give up a scoring drive as well?
Ask Jalen Marshall.
Yeah, Jalen Marshall. There you go. Like, he was the last prolific punt returner at Ohio State, and he terrified people. Mm-hmm. And so I think right now you just catch the ball and go from there. Now maybe down the road, Jaden Ballard is a guy that is going to try to make something happen because he doesn't get to play. Mm-hmm. So that might be something for later down the road, but not in this one. Kevin?
Yeah, Drowsy Dragon, do you think Trevion Henderson has a big game, and how big?
Do I think Trevion Henderson has a big game, and if so, how big? If Trevion Henderson runs for between 5.5 and 6 yards per carry, I would think that constitutes a big game for him. Now, the carries haven't really been there, so he might, that might be 12 carries for 70 yards or something like that, and that might be, if you're able to do that, that might be enough to, if you're consistently doing that, that might be enough to keep the defense honest enough to open things up down the field. I don't think they're winning this game solely on the ground. This is not a game where you're going to run for 250 yards and 5 touchdowns. That's not what this is. That's not what this offense is. That's not what this game is. But they just have to be consistent enough on the ground to be able to move keep the defense honest enough to move the ball downfield in chunks through the air. If you rip off a long one on the ground, great. But, I'm not expecting a 120-yard game from Trevion Henderson.
Yeah, you can almost set 120 yards at the team over, under, and we'll get into that on the Bold Prediction Show, I'm sure, in some form or fashion. Neither of us can wait. Kevin?
Yeah, let me see. Rich T, how do you think they're going to attack the left tackle for Notre Dame, Joe Alt?
How will they attack the left tackle from Notre Dame, Joe Alt? I don't know. Is this one of those situations where he's so good so you just focus on the other side? Like when Iowa used to play Orlando Pace and not put a defensive end over him just because, what's the point? Obviously, Ohio State's not going to do that, but do you send a blitzer from that side as well, or do you just, here you go, JT, here you go, Jack, have at it, or you do some twists and things like that? I think you can't just do one thing. You do multiple things.
Right. I'm expecting stunts and twists and all that kind of stuff on that side. You're not, this is not Orlando Pace. They had a graphic on the broadcast of the North Carolina State game where he'd had 114 pass rush attempts against him and no quarterback hurries or something like that. But this is not the greatest player in the history of football. You're probably, that is probably not, attacking him is probably not the game plan, but you're putting a guy over him. And then I think where they're going to have to go after is the middle of that Notre Dame defensive line. Maybe you're trying to get him, you're outside rushing him, trying to get him out so you can attack the middle of that line a little bit more.
Yeah, NC State had some success attacking the middle of the Notre Dame offensive line. Kevin?
3 more.
All right.
Here we go. Glasswing Butterfly. How much should we focus on the pass versus the run? Percentages?
How much should we focus on the pass versus the run in terms of
Ohio State play calls? Like Ohio State, how much is Ohio State throwing the ball versus running the ball?
They're going to try 50-50, but you adjust to what is working, and then if you're winning in the fourth quarter, you're going to be running the ball more. So I think it's just a feel. You go out there, the first quarter, you've got your game plan of what you want to do, and it depends on what's working. And if the running game isn't working, then you can't just stick with the running game. So
right.
I don't you start at 50-50, and however it ends up is based on what else is happening.
I'm expecting we look at the stat sheet at the end of the game and it's 55-45 pass to run Ohio State. And if it's 70-30, that's probably not good news. If it's 60-40 run, that's probably tremendous news for Ohio State.
Yep.
Timor, Odysseus, should we start 4 wide receivers to present a matchup advantage?
They really should Ohio State start 4 wide receivers to present a matchup advantage? They just really haven't done that. They really have been in. How often have we seen 1 back, 4 wide receivers, 10 personnel in the last couple of years?
We did see, I think at the end of the first half against Western Kentucky, that was the first time I remember seeing it.
But that was like not even a 2-minute drill situation.
That was
like a 45-second drill. Yeah.
So that's the extremes that they have to go to.
It's funny. We were watching the Notre Dame NC State game for the show we did on Wednesday afternoon, and you saw Notre Dame come out in 5 wide, and it's like, I was trying to remember the last time I saw Ohio State come out in 5 wide. That just, for a school that loads up on wide receivers, they just don't do that. They have a tight end out there a lot because they feel that tight end is important in terms of the run game, in terms of just having an extra pass blocker in there, having that running back there. It just they rarely go much more wide receiver heavy than 11 personnel with 3 receivers out there.
And even when you would see like 5 wide, it's a tight end and a running back split out.
Yeah.
Kevin?
All right, 2 more actually. Because I really like one of them. But this one from Yakov.
He can't count.
Wins, can we get an out of jail card for free regarding not winning the East yet and still making the playoffs last year in 2016?
Okay, so if Ohio State beats Notre Dame, is that a get out of jail free card for not winning the East? If Ohio State is not the team that comes out of the East, I think yes, but I think that scenario would be that one of the teams would have to, Michigan or Penn State would have to run the table, and either Michigan or Penn State loses 2 games, and Ohio State is the 7-1 team to the 8-0 team, and because if it's each of them win 1, and Ohio State has won all of its non-conference games, you get to the point in the tiebreakers where it's like the 5th tiebreaker down if it's 1-1-1 for all the teams. And the 5th tiebreaker down is your cross-divisional games, the difficulty of your cross-divisional games. And Ohio State is almost certainly going to be the best of those because Michigan does not have a particularly tough cross-divisional draw, neither does Penn State. So, if Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State go 1-1 each, Ohio State is probably the team that wins, so they win the division anyway. So really, the short answer is, yeah, this obviously helps your chances of making the playoff with a loss, but there's like only one real scenario where that probably comes into play.
I have been thinking that if Ohio State wins, that's probably the best win of the year for anybody, depending on what else happens on Saturday.
A true road win.
Yeah, because Alabama is not looking like Alabama right now. So Texas winning there, great job. It didn't really hold up too well against Wyoming, but I think this would be the best win for anybody. Now, we'll see what else happens. But.
Well, and we'll see what Notre Dame and Alabama look like at the end of the season.
But in terms of right now, I'm saying. Yeah.
Last one from Gladiator for Freedom. Okay, fellas, your first major test of the season. Are you ready?
What are we getting tested on? Is this a pop quiz? I was not prepared.
How do you keep an idiot in suspense? I'm waiting for the rest of the question.
It's gullible up there.
Yeah.
I've never noticed that before.
It doesn't. So is Ohio State ready for this? I mean,
are you ready?
Am I ready? Yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Who are we asking you? Is it
now?
Only I can prevent forest fires?
It's going to be a lot of work for us. We've got a lot of stuff planned.
We do.
That will be a test more than I am normally accustomed to. I don't like waking up before noon on a Friday, but we'll already be, probably in South Bend at that point. So I am ready for this test. I don't know that Kevin or Tom are. I know it sure seems like this team is, but it's going to be fascinating to watch this first quarter, because if somebody jumps out, that would surprise me in terms of the first quarter, just because of these kind of games. But then you also have in these kind of games, like the second quarter just drifts by, like you don't even notice it. And before you know it, it's like 21-14, and you're like, when did all these points get here?
Yeah. It's one of those games where you might have both teams score on the opening drive, on that scripted opening drive, and then it's 7-7 with 5 minutes left in the second quarter too. Like or 10-7 someone. I'm expecting close, a deeply uncomfortable game. Not a bad game, but just a game where Ohio State fans are just miserable watching the game. And
can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's going to be a heck of a fun day, a heck of a fun weekend. I am really looking forward to it. And, talking to the players, man, the players are very clearly looking forward to this one as well.
Yeah, so make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. That way you'll be notified, because we will, like I said, we'll be going live quite a bit this weekend. And, of course, we'll be dropping other videos as well. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. Find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Support us there as well. We would appreciate that. So thank you all for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys later.
Clear.